Hi everyone, and welcome to Not Dr. Justin Lerma and Will Roberts present Fun with FARs. Please join us as we discuss all of your FAR-related questions like, what is the FAR? Who has the most FARs in the entire world? And when will my first FAR be inducted into George Washington University's Law School Library? Now, Will, you brought us here today to talk specifically about becoming a SAP warrior. And you wanted to talk about comparative evaluations. Now, you're not supposed to compare people's solicitations, so I'd like to hear why. Why on earth would you want to talk about such a thing?
I've heard about it, comparative evaluations. I've heard about being a SAP warrior. Well, I know that SAP is not supposed to be like syrup. Like SAP, unlike syrup, is supposed to go fast. It's supposed to flow fast.
Oh.
To be a SAP warrior is to ooze down the tree more quickly.
That sounds awful, but let's get into part 13. Will, why is part 13 so important to us?
Part 13 is important because it's simplified. So it's not just fast, it's simple. And when you talk about comparative evaluations, I've heard about comparative evaluations, and in my career, comparative evaluations, people, when they talk about that, it's a big no-no.
That's right.
So when you're talking to your source selection team, and you get them together and you give them the orientation on how they're going to do their source selection, one of the things that you tell them is not to do comparative evaluations, which is you look at each of the proposals coming in and you start comparing them with one another. What you're supposed to do is what we've been taught, right?
Yep.
And part 15 tells you to do, and any source selection guides in part 15, is you look at each one on the merits of its own proposal, and then you do your trade-off later, or the contracting officer will do the trade-off. The team is not supposed to go into some kind of comparison.
Yeah.
Like, well, offer A does this, that's great, but B does this better, so, you know.
Yeah.
So when people talk about comparative evaluations, it seems that we've been taught this whole time that they're wrong.
Yeah, but they're definitely not. We have some education on that. We'll go ahead and link things like the PILS training videos on comparative evaluations. We'll link the periodic table of acquisition innovations. But let's talk about how this process actually works so that we can go faster. First of all, Will, you said part 15 tells us something different. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about part 15 here.
No.
Not at all. Stay in your lane. We're talking about keeping things simple.
Simplified. All right, so Justin, walk us through then what comparative evaluations are with part 13. We know that part 15 doesn't apply. What then does a comparative evaluation look like? And, well, actually, before we ask that, let me ask you, why are comparative evaluations sometimes simpler? Why are they better than looking at each one separately and then making the comparison?
Well, I mean, I think you sort of said it right there. Like, it's one of the reasons we even do things like an on-the-spot consensus. If we go and we read lots of proposals and then we come together at some later point and we try and bring everyone's thought process together, you have different ideas jumbled up together, right? So immediately you're going to create some length there, right? So the idea of doing a comparison, right? Let's look at two things at one time, right? Let's say, all right, based on factor, this one's the better, right? Now I can move on to the next one, right? I'm moving quicker, right? I'm not wasting time. I'm not sending people, even off maybe to go do their own comparisons a little later. Their own reviews a little bit. So as we said before, we're gonna go ahead and give you a link to how the PIL looks at this, and then also a GAO protest that shows how GSA actually approached this particular technique, right?
Which was protested,
but not sustained, which I think is very important here.
Yep.
Right, and there's lots of ways we can think about this. Now, this was actually a topic that was asked by some folks for us to cover. So the idea here is very much what I said just a little bit ago. We are going to, in our solicitation, say we may end up using a comparative evaluation. Now, the reason for that is because the comparative evaluation has some things that maybe make it a little bit easier to leverage, right? We're talking about buying off of a schedule, buying off of an IDIQ, this kind of thing, and specifically wanting to be sure that we just have a few offerers. Now, the idea behind this now is when we have a few offerers and we're already in a position where we're buying in a certain kind of way, usually something that's going to move us a little quicker, right? We are now going to take two, let's say I have 5 proposals, right? I'm going to take 2. We're just going to pick 2. and I'm going to compare them based on the factors I've sort of laid out here. I'm not going to assign ratings. That's going to terrify a number of people here. And I'm just going to go down the line and decide which one of these is a stronger proposal.
Yep.
When I identify that one, I'm going to put that one down and I'm going to move to the next one. And I'm going to look at the two and I'm going to say, okay, this one's not as good. I'm going to drop that one.
Yeah.
And we keep going down the line until we identify sort of the best proposal. Now, once we start to think about price, there may be a trade-off decision that identifies something a little different, right? But that's one way that we may end up going about this process.
So you mentioned no ratings. I think that's huge because every contracting office I've been in, whether you're ordering from a vehicle like subpart 16.5, like an IDIQ, you're ordering from a federal supply schedule like subpart 8.4, there's adjectival ratings. You always want to assign ratings. So what you're talking about with comparative evaluations is if you're looking at a particular factor, let's say you still have kind of evaluation criteria, and let's say technical approach is one of them. You're not giving them a numerical rating like 1 through 5. You're not giving them adjectival ratings like exceptional to marginal or whatever.
No.
You're just putting points down about things that you like about it, maybe things you don't like about it.
Yep.
And you're comparing those points. You choose, this is one way you can do it, right? You choose for that technical approach. You choose the offer that has the best technical approach. You put the rationale there. So you're kind of looking at everyone at the same time, no ratings,
Yep.
and you're saying out of all these considerations, this one's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way I did it was like looking at two at one time and then sort of putting one down, but you can absolutely look. In fact, I believe the pill recommends this. You can look at several at once and make some decisions about that.
I guess it depends on how many you get, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But we talked about this just a little while ago. You know, I think that even if you got a whole bunch of responses to your solicitation, as long as you use that language like I may use a comparative evaluation. Even if I got a bunch of proposals, and usually we might couple this with like a phased approach, like a down select, I can still take that large proposal set down and then maybe get to my top 2 and then do a comparison right there and sort of move a little faster.
So if you combine with a multi-phase, first phase can be some yes or no questions.
Sure.
You go down to maybe a handful.
Yeah.
And so I think that in the DHS example is they maybe looked at a whole bunch at the same time.
Yeah.
The GSA example is what you're talking about, is they did like a tournament style.
Yeah.
Where they looked at 2 together first, the winner moves on.
Yeah.
Loser, out of the game.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing too, this was part of the, I think the protest, is it all comes down to something we all know about, we all hear about. If you explain it in your solicitation that that's exactly what you're going to do, then you can't protest. All the offers are already on notice that you're going to do this kind of comparative evaluation. You're in Part 13. The whole purpose of Part 13 is to streamline, make things economical, make things efficient. There's really no way an offer can protest a comparative evaluation if you say you're going to do it, and then you do it the way you say you're going to do it.
Yeah, and that was outlined in that protest. I do recommend you check out that protest decision. We're not making this up. This isn't funsies or anything like that. People do them up to many millions of dollars of buys. And then I also think you're maybe talking about something a little different too, Will, which is, one of the reasons people might be afraid to use this technique is because we were taught to do something a little different.
Yeah.
And our vendor community has also been conditioned to expect something a little different, right? No comparative evals. There's no way we're going to do this. But the landscape's changing with all these different acquisition approaches, and I think the vendor community also needs to understand what's what now with the way people are going out and buying these things.
What's another controversy I heard is with LPTA, and you're doing an LPTA type thing in Part 13. If you just choose the lowest price, make sure that's technically acceptable, that lowest price, and that's it. You don't even look at any other proposals. That's been criticized too, but the reality is, and I know you're smiling because you don't like LPTA, but either way, if you say you're going to do that in the solicitation, like this is the way we're going to do things, then Part 13, there's nothing in the FAR that prohibits you from doing that.
No.
If it's protested, that's exactly the way the courts are going to look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Did they do what they said they were going to do? And that's why we're really interested in understanding that kind of thing. And my laughing at LPTA is more to do with how some people use it, not necessarily the technique.
Yeah.
It's we were talking about how maybe LPTA was great for like cloud buying when you're talking about instances.
It's got its place.
It's got its place.
It's still a tool in the tool belt.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But I think the other, to add on to what you were saying, one of the other things you might see with this is the idea of using an on-the-spot consensus, and a lot of what we're talking about is, some variance of an on-the-spot consensus. Right? I'm going to look at these two proposals on the spot, potentially, or I'm going to, be in a room with people and we're going to talk about the merits on the spot. Once again, to reduce the amount of paperwork that's out there, the more paper that's around, right, the more there is to protest, and to bring the time down, which is the point here. And you'll hear examples where from solicitation to award, utilizing this process, 40 days, 42 days, 43 days, it's tighter. Let's say we're talking about gigantic buys, maybe something you feel like might not even fit underneath a schedule. I mean, I think there are ways to come under SAP, right? To test things out. We're supposed to anyway. Part 39 tells us to buy modularly. We probably can get most things down to at least start testing and move a little quicker, spend a little less money. So I think there's a lot of legs here when we think about 13.
I think that's the first goal of any FAR-based procurement. Is the first step is to try to get it under Part 13. Try to figure out what kind of exception or what kind of thing you can do to put yourself into SAP procedures, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I think this is so uncomfortable is we just talked about no adjectival ratings.
Yeah.
We talked about doing something where you're asking your team of evaluators to compare. That's weird. It's weird it's very counterintuitive to what most people in the contracting community have been doing, to do this without any sort of rating. But that's the point. If you watch we did a acquisition for dummies called Let's Get Simplified, all about Part 13. Where in 13.002, it talks about the purpose of 13 is to reduce administrative costs, improve small business opportunities. C, though, is promote efficiency and economy in contracting. And then D is avoid unnecessary burdens. You have so many flexibilities in Part 13. This video with comparative evaluations is just one example of a very flexible thing you can do that may ruffle some feathers in your office with people that are really used to Part 15 type stuff. But something you can absolutely do. If you start doing stuff like this more, maybe you can start educating your office to start doing Part 13 looking stuff instead of saying you're doing Part 13, but really doing Part 15.
That's basically the same thing we say about like agile or iteration, right? I say I'm doing it, I'm just doing a big old waterfall sort of buy.
Yeah, that's true.
And look, again, we might be ruffling your feathers. It's hard to get people to think about competence ratings as opposed to strengths and weaknesses. So we get that this is sort of gnarly and really scary. So please look at the resources we've provided you. Think about some of the things that we've talked about. Go look at Part 13. Go look at Part 39 as well. We have a video on Part 39 that we'll link as well.
Yep.
That if you're buying IT, I think you need to think about, because again, do we need to keep buying these major systems in this way? Or can we start to look like maybe, the Army recently did with their contract writing system and many others, and maybe think about getting under 13 to test things out, to move a little quicker. I don't actually know if the Army did Part 13, right? But my point is they cut it down. They weren't doing this big, massive sort of buyout. I think you have a lot of options once you're under there.
Yep. And I think we know about the options. You mentioned Agile. It's a common thing for us to say we're doing something like simplified Agile and not do it. So don't be that way. If you're going to be simplified not just in word, but also in deed.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I like that one. That's what? Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. Well, there it is. Yeah. Well, anyways, that's all we have today for our first episode of Fun with FARs.
Hope you had fun.
And please join us next week while we talk about the merits of the
Federal Tax Code. Oh, sorry. Walter's Kluwer?
We're talking about the Federal Tax Code?
Nah. I just thought you were going to say that.
Oh.
There's no reason why we should.
No.
Join us next time.